Alright, lovely people, I don't normally do reaction videos, but here I am. This is the banned and restricted announcement we just got today. I've had some time to digest this. It's been about just under 4 hours since the announcement went live. Let's just go through it together so that you lovely people who watch my channel know what's happening. So, Legacy, no changes. That is absolutely wild to me. I thought the worst case scenario was they only banned 2 things. It didn't even occur to me they would ban nothing. A bit yikes. Let's have a look at what they said about it. Alright, so saying it's been a few months since we last took action in Legacy. Back in March, the only real way to engage the Legacy format was by playing some form of combo, prison or Eldrazi. At the time, our intent was explicitly to remove the negative play patterns of sowing Microspawn and take Dimir Reanimated down a peg. Thus far, the results have been mixed to positive. I would highly disagree with the results being mixed to positive. I don't think that necessarily reflects the format that we're all playing in. Since the banning of sowing Microspawn and Eldrazi decks have more or less vanished from the metagame, with Mystic Forge artifact combo decks taking its place as the most popular colourless deck. Dimir Reanimated, on the other hand, has remained the most played deck in the format, albeit at a lower win rate and smaller share of the metagame. It's not necessarily a point that I entirely agree on here. If we look at the metagame share at the moment, it's at 19.3%. If we look at the last 7 days, 18.1%. So it's kind of holding around the 19% mark, more or less. That is about where it was before. It was hovering between 20 and 25, so maybe it's a little bit less, but it is also winning a fair bit, but we'll go into some stats in a minute. In a lot of ways, this is the process working as intended. That is quite a terrifying line of text to me. Alright, ultimately, Eternal formats are a place where people want to feel like they can put a bunch of time into collecting all of the cards for a deck and know that it will be viable for a long time. Given that the most recent Legacy showcase on Magic Online had an extremely diverse top 8, with the lone copy of Dimir Reanimated going out in the quarterfinals, it feels like Legacy players have directions to go if they want to be successful without playing Daze and Entomb together. This kind of suggests they're looking at one single event, albeit a highly competitive event. But if we look at the weekend that's just gone, there were 4 challenges, and 12 of the top 8 placings were Dimir Reanimator. That is a lot. That is 3 in every top 8. That is not very diverse. Alright, it's hard for us to disentangle if the reason that Dimir is showing up at high rate is because it's the best deck in Legacy, or if Legacy is delivering on its promise of allowing players to play with the same cards year over year. This makes very little sense considering that a lot of the data we've got is from Magic Online, where it's a lot easier to chop and change decks than it is in paper. If anything, the paper metagame is much healthier than the online metagame, because in paper, people don't have the card availability. They play the decks they like to play a lot more, because they don't get to necessarily play as many events. Whereas online, the decks get refined a lot more, and people just play like the best thing. And as we've seen, as soon as Blue-Black Reanimator started winning an event, and the list was more or less solved, it just rose to being the best deck almost immediately. So I'm not really sure I agree with anything that's been said here, but we'll look at some stats in a minute. One divisive topic in Legacy is the existence of Oops All Spells deck. Oops All Spells is a deck that exists on the back of technicalities and technically complex rules interactions. It's just double-faced lands, really, isn't it? That's really helping it out for the most part right now. The deck gets its name by not playing cards that are lands on the front side, then maximising what it can get out of that restriction. In its initial configuration, it uses Balustrade Spire and Undersea Informer to mill its entire deck, recur some creatures like Narcomoeba and Poxwalkers, and use those creatures to fuel the flashback costs of Dread Return, targeting Thassa's Oracle to win immediately. After sideboarding, the deck can dodge Graveyard Hate by using Goblin Charbelcher to reveal 40 or 50 cards and kill the opponent in one giant shot. As the deck has evolved over time, cards like Jack-O-Lantern and Memory's Journey have helped the deck become more resilient to interaction. To some, this deck can be particularly frustrating to lose to, as it feels like it's abusing Magic's game engine more than it is playing a game of Magic. To other people, it's an illustration of why Magic's game engine is cool. The deck is doing a bunch of things that shouldn't be allowed and rewards having a deep knowledge of the rules and cards in Magic. It puts us in a difficult position of trying to arbitrate whether we think it has positive or negative impacts on the environment. Now, I would argue that Oops All Spells does the opposite of giving you a deep knowledge of rules and cards in Magic, because you don't need to know many cards in the game, because your game plan is so proactive and so fast. You only need to know a very small handful of cards that you care about. So I would actually say the opposite of this is true. And Oops All Spells is a deck that you used to give to a new person to the format, because you could say, okay, these are how you recognize some decks you're playing against. These are the cards they're going to have. This is how you sideboard against them. It's very quick and simple, more or less. And I just think this is not really very accurate. It puts us in a difficult position of trying to arbitrate whether we think it has a positive or negative impact. Sorry, I've already read that bit. Unlike other archetypes, so much of why this deck exists is because of a one-of-a-kind card that run the risk of killing the deck completely if we were to address the archetype. For now, the deck is showing up at a range that is acceptable for decks in the format, and that has a win rate that is within permissible ranges, which has us reluctant to make a change. Given the strong negative reactions some players have to playing against the deck, and how hard it can be to adapt to, the bar it has to clear for us to take action against is lower than with some other decks. But for now, we're happy to let such a unique deck have a place to exist within Magic. Now, I disagree with pretty much everything in this banned and restricted announcement. To me, it feels like the amount of legacy that the people who wrote this are playing is not as much as people who grind on Magic Online a lot. You know, obviously, I probably play more Legacy than most people that play Legacy. You know, I put out 25 rounds of Legacy content every week and sometimes play it in my spare time as well. So I'm probably playing Legacy in the top 1 or possibly 0.5, maybe 0.1% of players on the planet. So my opinion is obviously going to be skewed a little bit more. But I think some of these comments about Oopsal spells just don't really sit right with me. So let's pull up these stats I was talking about. So these are the stats for the entire format since Tarka Dragonstorm came out to right now. This is all the decks that have 1% or more of the meta with 3 or more top 8 placings. And this is out of nearly 500 top 8 placings, I think, over the period, something like that. I think it's 488, something along that line. So it's quite a lot of data. As we can see, over that entire period, Blue-Black Reanimator is just shy of 11%, but it's putting up nearly 16%. That is basically 50% more of the top 8 than you would expect if it had a representative range. So that is a pretty strong win rate there. Oopsal spells, 6.6 of the meta over the whole period, so not enormous, but, you know, a pretty sizable thing when we're looking at the percentages of legacy decks out there. And it's put up 9.4%, which is, again, pretty close to being 50% more top 8s than you would expect it to if it was representative. If we go back through and look at how the meta was, when we started out this meta, people weren't playing Blue-Black Reanimator, and Oopsal spells was... the over-rep of Oopsal spells was over 2 for a while. And then once people worked out the new Blue-Black Reanimator list with Tamiyo and stuff without Troll being in the format, the Oops slowly trickled down till it hit about 1.4. And it's hovered between 1.4 and 1.6 over-rep pretty much the entire time since Blue-Black Reanimator got its like second weekend of results, really. So Blue-Black Reanimator is the thing that is kind of keeping Oopsal spells down. But both of these things are kind of problematic because Oops keeps down a whole bunch of stuff. Because game 1, it basically beats a lot of decks. And then some decks just don't get to interact with it until they get to play a spell. So game 3, they're just losing a lot of the time. And that is a real issue to me. It's not a very fun play experience. And we have the card Hermit Druid being banned in Legacy right now. That card has been banned for a long time. It's a 2-mana sorcery speed spell because it's a creature. And what you do is you tap it and then you get to mill your deck until you find a basic, basically. However, you can play it with no basics and then you mill your whole deck. So it does the same stuff as the Oops creatures, except it takes an entire turn cycle to go around the table and it's like susceptible to removal and stuff like that. I just think that if Hermit Druid is banned, why are the Oopsal spells creatures legal? It doesn't make any sense. It's very inconsistent in the philosophy on the ban list. Like, if you want to unban Hermit Druid, you know, that's a thing you're allowed to do. But it has to... You can't have these creatures legal, but then have Hermit Druid banned when Hermit Druid is weaker than doing it on turn 1. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, some of you may have noticed that Lands is doing very well here. So Lands is a bit of a natural predator of graveyard decks because it plays 4 main deck crop rotations, which are instant speed, graveyard hate. It also has the ability to have the one of Soul Guide Lantern / Grafdigger's Cage stuff going on. So Lands is kind of trying to prey upon these 2 decks, which is why it's doing quite well. Now, obviously, 1.8 is the highest overrep here, but it's obviously a much smaller sample. So 2.6 to 5% isn't the biggest jump. It's not as big as 10% to 16%, right? Or 11% to 16%. That's a much bigger jump in terms of meta share. So I think we are in for a not so great 3 months of Legacy. I disagree with what the banning stuff here is, and I think the format is going to suffer from it. Already I've seen lots of people saying they're just going to not go to Eternal Weekend. I myself am not going to Eternal Weekend. I was on the fence with it, and given this ban announcement, the fact that the next BNR comes between 2 Eternal Weekends, so I suspect they're not going to make any changes, it just means that I don't want to spend that much money to go to an event like that. I don't think it's worth it for me personally to do that, given the state of where the format is right now. I'd rather go and spend my money on another event, something like Eternal Mania, where I can go and play things like Pre-Modern instead. Obviously, I will play a little bit of Legacy there too, but I don't want to spend an entire weekend playing in a format that I think is in a bad shape, if it's going to cost me a whole bunch of money to do so. Now, what it must be said is the people that made this ban and restricted announcement, they're doing their best. Like, I think the problem is they're not playing enough Legacy. They don't really know what's going on, but they're doing the best they can from a position of not knowing. And if anyone here wants to go and hurl abuse at them, do not do that. That is a disgusting thing to do. These people are human beings, and at the end of the day, even though this is my, employment, this is how I make my money, it is still a game at the end of the day, and nobody needs to get abused or shouted at because of what's happening on our ban list, right? Let's get some perspective in life. I think they've made mistakes. I think we can criticize that without being cruel to these people. And if I see anyone doing that, then you're just going to get booted from my channel. You're not going to be able to comment if you're saying like vicious or nasty things, and the same on any of my socials. It's entirely possible to criticize the people who have made these decisions without abusing them. I think these decisions are terrible. I think it's a terrible spot for Legacy to be in. I think it's close to as bad as it was when they didn't ban Grief, and they should have done, and we had 3 months of a dead duck format, and we're kind of just in the same position now. In terms of what I'm doing now, for me, I'm wondering if I should be doing some content that isn't Legacy now. So I do Pre-Modern as the other format I play. I sometimes put out the occasional additional Pre-Modern video. If you would like to see more Pre-Modern videos, I need to know this. Because last time when we had a format that was like this, where they should have banned Grief, my viewer count went down a lot. That cost me money I needed to put food on my table. So I need to know what you want to see. If you still want to see me playing Legacy every day, I will carry on doing that. If you are okay with me mixing up and putting one Pre-Modern video in a week just to break things up a little bit, let me know. I'm more than happy to do that. I would quite enjoy it. I just need to know. So please let me know in the comments about what you want me to do with my channel going forwards. If you are happy to see a little bit of Pre-Modern action as one of my weekday videos, I will also be putting a little poll up to see what people are interested in. But yeah, not a great day for the old Legacy ban list in my opinion. But maybe some of these like excellent innovators will find a way to make this okay. But right now it feels like Blue Black Reanimator is going to continue being the very best thing we can do in Legacy, and then decks like Oopsal spells are going to choke out anything else underneath that. So it's kind of going to be play lands, Oops, or Blue Black Reanimator, I guess, is kind of how it's going to feel. And maybe if enough people are playing lands, it might hate out the Blue Black Reanimator decks a little bit. I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm not feeling very confident about the next 3 months in terms of how fun they're going to be. But I would love to be wrong. Being wrong is something that I am very happy to be quite often, because it means that things aren't going to suck. I'm sure many other people who play just as much or even more Legacy than me are going to write some comments about this sort of format right now, so check out their videos, see what's going on. I know the Eternal Glory lot have definitely got some stuff in the works, and I would definitely recommend listening to their next episode of their podcast and seeing what they come up with. But for me, this is a big swing and a miss. And I think the problems that we have here is that we just need to get some people that play a lot more Legacy involved in these discussions and where, like, how Wizards is deciding it. This is not the first time we've had a questionable looking BNR list. I'd like it to be the last, and there's probably a way that we can work with Wizards and communicate with them how we feel about this in a pleasant and polite and constructive fashion. Those are the key elements here. We love Legacy. I love Legacy. It's my favorite format. I love what we can do in this format, and that's where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a position of love and respect for this format and the people that do help us allow it to work. If it wasn't for Wizards, we wouldn't get to play this. Just because they've made a mistake doesn't mean the entire world is on fire. But I think the saddest thing is I've had people message me, and I've seen people online already saying that they're just not going to play Legacy for the rest of the year, most likely. And that is the biggest death knell to me that makes me really sad. Because this is a great format. It's got some problems in it that need fixing, but it is a great format on the whole that we could easily amend. Alright, I think I've rambled about this one enough. I am absolutely baking today. It is quite warm, and hopefully I made sense. Summing up, BNR, not very good today, but I believe it is an honest mistake that the people have made here, and there's nothing malicious. You should treat the people who do this with a great deal of respect, even if you disagree with their decisions. Alright, let me know what you want me to do with my channel. Please remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye.
If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon.
It has a free guide to budget turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.